All right, I have us right on time at 11:15, so let's go ahead and jump in. I'm Kylie Donia. I'm with the Esri education team, and today I get to talk with you guys about field data collection. So my background at Esri is actually that I started with our data collection app. So I used to work on the product side and got to help make some of these apps I'm talking about today. Then I realized my passion is more with using GIS with children and in education. And so this happens to be one of my favorite sessions to present because not only does it get to be data collection, but it's with kids and education. It's like the intersection of some of my passions. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I do want you to feel free to ask your questions along the way. We will be watching the chat, and I look forward to having some discussion with you guys. So first of all, why data collection with kids? Well, have you ever noticed that kids get really excited and animated when they get to start to put some data on the map, right? They're going to get to generate data, and maybe it's their own observations, or maybe this is data from talking to people, maybe like interviews or asking other people about their observations. But part of that data that we're going to talk about in the field has where, right? So it can go on a map. And that's why we're talking about it today. And what we're actually going to talk about is both how students can do this as student projects and you can do it as class projects. So what I cover today can work in both of those spaces. And let's jump in. All right, there we go. So really, there's even more to data collection and more power to it than just putting data on a map. Because as I'm sure you're aware, data is all around us. We're always using it, we're evaluating it. And by doing data collection, students are going to start to understand how to structure their data. They're going to start to understand how to think critically about the data around them. For example, once you understand what goes into collecting data, you understand you can't always take it for granted. You need to look at, well, who collected it? How did they do that? What types of information did they collect to make that final conclusion? Because the students have experienced that process. They're getting to build data, step into roles as scientists, and they come out as better data consumers and evaluators, as well as understanding the world around them. Data collection is often thought to be really complex, right? That it takes a lot of setup and work, and it can. And doing a complex project does take a lot of planning, but not every data collection project needs to be so complex. I'm going to jump over to the browser now. And we're going to look at one of the data collection projects that if you've seen me present or heard from me, you might have heard about this before. I love this one. This started for me when COVID started, and my own children who are elementary age were asking me what I do at work all day. And loving data collection, we started there. And we just put together a very simple project. We asked two questions. No, there we go. What is your favorite color? And there's a choice list. And then where are you? So you can pick the color, and then you can go ahead and browse on the map, click and put the pin about where you are, and put your location, and then you can submit that result. I'm not going to bother submitting today. I've done this one quite a number of times, but what happens here is kids see the dot appear right onto the map. Okay, so I think of this as participatory GIS. Everyone can answer this question and get on the map. But notice this scroll bar. So we've already filled out the data collection and we're already looking at the map of answers and we're still not even halfway down. So keep that in mind as we're talking right now. The data collection is actually just the beginning, right? It's how we get started, and we'll come back here in a little bit. So when we are talking about doing this data collection with your class, let's first talk a little bit about what you're going to do. You do need to have an ArcGIS for Schools bundle, which is the free software offering from Esri, or a GIS Club Kit, which is also free, but a little bit smaller and a little more temporary. With that, you'll get all the apps I talk about today. Once you have that software, you're not going to dive into it right away, right? That's just a requirement to moving this project forward, but you're going to start with designing your project. That's likely not and shouldn't be in the software at all. Once you've thought about your project and designed it, then you're going to pick what app or tool you're going to use to do this project, and you're going to set up that tool. And then, of course, you're going to collect the data and use that collected data. All right, so project design. You need to start by deciding what question you want to answer or what problem you want to solve. So there might be a problem in society that your students want to solve. There might be a pattern they've seen around them in the world that they would like to investigate, or maybe they've noticed it and they wonder, how far does it carry? What are sort of the limits of this pattern? So this design phase is all about figuring out what information you need to answer and solve your problem and what your problem is. And it's going to be a little bit iterative, okay? You're not in the tech here. So this is not about the buttons to click, the mechanics of putting questions on a page. Honestly, that's going to be one of the easiest parts, and we'll get there. But you have to be ready to get into there. Okay, right now we want to understand what variables are going to contribute to solving our problem. What answers do you want? And here is really where kids are going to need the most guidance, because what they're learning is how to ask good questions and how to get the needed information. Now, as you're doing this planning and design, a great way to start is at a whiteboard. Make sure you keep it interesting though, right? What's your problem or question? What kind of information do you need? What are you going to do with that information? You want to be thinking about if you're getting the right information to answer it. For example, if the question your students have is about a difference among age groups, make sure they remember, well, did you record their age, right? There are little things like that. Is it a difference in genders? Well, make sure you've asked and gotten the gender. So your tech here, the level you need to understand the tech right now is that all of the Esri apps that you can use for data collection are going to do some similar things. They're all going to capture location. They're going to capture pictures for that location and additional info. And that additional info is kind of the bucket you get to work with and decide what you want to be putting into it. Okay, so focus right now on what kinds of information you need and what you want to do with it. Now, here's always kind of the tough point for me. In the next hour, we're going to talk about, once you have the data, some ways to kind of go beyond just the data collection part. And it's a chicken and an egg issue for me, because to really do a good data collection project, you already need to have in mind what you want to do with that data. Well, to do something with the data, you have to have the data. So anytime you get into that back and forth, chicken and egg, what comes first, it's probably a good indicator that you're going to do some iteration here. Okay, so you're going to start the best you can, and you may need to come back and evaluate again. But start with things like, what kind of data do I need? Do I need names? What is a name? Okay, a name's probably a string, because I can't give someone choices. I don't want to list all the names. Okay, what if I want to ask a question like, how long did it take? Or how long ago was it? Well, if I give a string, some people might say things like, since last Tuesday. Well, I want a number of days. Okay, that's important for me to recognize. So I want to ask questions and I want to constrain the answers so that I get the types of information I want. I want a number. I want it to be days. So this is my design, right? I'm figuring out types like integers and units like days so that I get the right data. Now, something to start thinking about, there's not just strings and numbers, there's other things, right? Maybe you want to present a set of choices that people can pick between. And here we do start edging a little bit into the tech, right? Because what the tech can do is going to influence what we need to understand about the question. So that type, right, that answer, is it a number? Is it a string? Was it a choice out of a list? That's going to influence what you can put on the map, how you can make that map look, right? The style of it. It's going to influence the statistics, and it's going to influence the analysis that you can do. So one of my favorite things to do in GIS really is to play. So start getting some ideas, and then you'll get to jump in and start playing with those things. Now to play, we do now start caring about the tech. Okay, what I have on the slide here is 3 of the most popular data collection apps that Esri has. So Survey123 is the one that's the most popular in education, and it's kind of like Google Forms with a map. So you're filling out a form, for example, an interview. ArcGIS FieldMaps, you may have heard of ArcGIS Collector, FieldMaps, consider them the same thing. FieldMaps is just the new version. And this is putting info on a map. So the map is a little bit more front and center. If you care about the things around you as you're doing your collection, you might find this a better fit. And then there's Quick Capture, which is very much about rapid data collection, pressing a single button, getting information, and moving on. And in education, Survey 123 is the most popular. And so that's the one we're really going to dig in today. Now, if you find that there's a different one of these apps that you are more interested in, I do have a resource to help you pick which one. And in it, it also has resources on getting started with all of these. So you'll have all of that information. And I have the link at the end, or I can throw it into the chat. Let me just grab it really quick and find my chat window. There's that URL. So when you're looking at these apps, and again, they'll be at the end here. All right, so I did say that Survey 123 is the most popular, but there's a few considerations that you can make while you're choosing, and I'm just going to go over them really quick. Again, that link I just stuck in the chat will go into detail. Do you have a network connection? ArcGIS FieldMaps works great without a network connection. Survey 123 can be set up to. It takes a little more work, but it gets there, and Quick Capture is, coming up behind it. Does everyone have a login? ArcGIS FieldMaps and Quick Capture do require the person submitting the data to be signed in. Can you install apps? Maybe it's a phone or tablet. Maybe you're asking the public, and so you're not going to ask them to install an app. Well, Survey 123 you can fill out in a browser, but ArcGIS FieldMaps or Quick Capture, you would need to install an app. And then are you updating data? So different apps work with that. In this case, it's FieldMaps, and Survey can do that editing. And are you working with advanced location and GPS positions and want that accuracy? Well, you might want to consider FieldMaps. It has some great tools for that. And the final one is if you have a GeoMentor that you're working with, they're a great resource and source of knowledge. If they have a preference, if they have some expertise in one of these, that might help you have a successful project because they'll be able to help you more easily. All right. Now we're ready. So let's go ahead and let's dig in. And we're going to make a survey. So let's come back in here. And so when you come into Survey 123, you'll see I have a number of surveys. You may not have quite so many yet, but what you will have is a new survey button. And you're going to click that to get started. Survey 123 Connect is once you want to do some more advanced things. I almost always start in the web designer and usually with a blank survey. And we can give it a name. Getting to know each other. And let's give it some tags. We'll just go with demo today, and let's just get it creating. Now, the great thing about Survey 123 is that behind the scenes, what it's doing right now is it's creating the feature services that you need to work with in order to use this data in a number of ways that helps keep it safe and secure. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add some fields onto here. The first thing, I may want to know who's filling out my form. So I'm going to go ahead and add a text field. Now, if I wanted, I could give them some information about how to fill out this field. And I'm not going to do this for everyone. You're going to get the basic idea here. There's a panel on the side, and over here is where I pick the values for this. For example, is it required? Well, that's pretty important. I try to use required sparingly, but you need to use it enough that you get the data you want, right? Because we've designed our project and we know the things we have to know. I always ask myself, if someone's not willing to answer this question, do I want them to bother filling out my survey? And when the answer is no, if they're not going to answer, they shouldn't fill it out, require the question, then they have to answer. Okay, and here in the top, you can choose different things you're doing. In this case, we're adding another question. So we'll pick add. Let's put a map on in because after all, this is a geographic project. And we can, again, give it a question and give it a little bit more information. I find with the map, that's often useful because some people aren't quite sure how to work with that, especially if you're having other people fill this out. And let's see, we can add images. And let's see some other good ones in here. Okay, a single choice, right? This will allow you, I find that kind of the names are misleading, right? So there's single choice and there's multiple choice. Don't think of that like a multiple choice quiz because really it's a single answer and a multiple answer. You have multiple choices in both of them. So let's go ahead and fill out, in this case, let's find out what breakfast drinks people like. And we're going to give them a set of choices. Now, this is one of my favorite tips in Survey 123. If you haven't noticed it, there is a batch edit button. You could click here, type in your first choice, click the next one, and click the next. I find it much easier to sometimes plan this ahead of time, and I have it in another document because I've done my planning. So I can go ahead and use that to paste them all in at once instead of having to add each of those items. And just so we can see what it looks like, here's a multi-choice as well. And we can do the same thing with that one, where we have a selection of answers, and we'll go ahead and batch edit to add them in. And there are times strings are appropriate. And the reason I'm going to put another one in is we'll see some just different ways to look at it. So why don't you go ahead and tell me what your favorite book is? And let's add in a number as well. We can put in a number and we can say, how many EduCs have you been to? All right, and let's go ahead and set a range on that one. I can say, you know what? Everyone has to have been to at least 0. And I don't think anyone's been to more than 40. So we can put those numbers in. Now, of course, you want to constrain these so it makes sense for your data, right? I'm just showing you some examples. At this point, I would want to look at my survey and make sure things like, did I make required the ones I wanted? Oh, I didn't even remember to get the question for this one. So let's go ahead, get back to that one, make sure I've filled that out. So scroll through, see how it looks, and you can save your work. You can also preview it and see what the survey looks like so far. When you do that, it takes you out of this editing look and feel and into the using look and feel as if you're filling it out. And you can even choose to see how it would look on different devices if you're curious. Once you're done with this, you're going to go ahead and publish. Publishing takes your survey and actually packages it up and gets it ready to be used. But it's not ready to use yet. Well, it is ready, but only by you, because one thing we haven't done yet is shared it. So as soon as it's published, you'll be able to share it. And when you share, again, because Survey 123 is smart, it's going to know all the different pieces to share and how to share them for you. So right now it's taking all of those and setting them up. All right. So one thing, I did go through this a little quick. I do find it's a fairly intuitive interface. It is a lot of drag and drop and filling out options on the side. And again, play. Go in and try the different ones. See what the different things look like. Once you've done that, you'll be able to come in here to the Collaborate tab. And on Collaborate, you can choose who you're going to share the survey with. So this is all about who can submit it, who can fill it out, right? And maybe I want to make it everyone, or maybe just my organization or a certain group. That's up to me. And I can make that change and I can save it. Now today, I actually made one already, and we're going to go ahead and look at it from the filling out point of view. All right, whoops, sorry about that. Let me get that browser back up. All right, so let's jump into the next tab. And here is what our survey will look like. That's the designer, sorry. Let me go ahead into the Collaborate tab. Okay, so this is the one I prepared ahead of time. And when you're ready for people to fill it out, again, we want to make sure the sharing is set up correctly. And then they need this link. So we can take that link. And if you'd like to fill out this survey, you're welcome to. You can also get a QR code. I find this really useful because you can just download it right here and stick it into an email. Very handy for sharing the survey. Or if you're having your class do a project and you've created your survey together, you can share that at the front of the room. And if your class is using like iPads, they can take pictures of that and open your survey. All right, so now let's go ahead and open our survey to fill it out. If you're not doing this on your own, that's fine. Just join me. Okay, so you can put your name onto the map. You can go ahead and put where you live. I'm not going to let my browser determine it for me. I can go ahead and search right in. I can also search. I work at our Redlands location, so we get our pin right there on the map. We can pick an image file if we want. It's not required, so I'll skip it today. Actually, I am very much a water drinker. I love reading, exercise in the outdoors. I'm not sure if I can ever pick a favorite book. We'll go with a favorite book, not my very favorite book. And the number of EduCs I've been to, well, I'm newer on the team. And we can submit that answer. All right, once you've submitted it, you'll be able to explore that data. So you can see in here, we're looking at the results of the survey. And we're in the same tab, but we're over here in Analyze now. So just to orient ourselves, before when we were authoring, we were in Design. We went to Collaborate to Share, and now we've moved over to Analyze. And you can see that when there are enough answers, we start to get a word cloud. We'll also see people who did take pictures. You can see them submitted in here. We can see the charts of the information. So we're getting a look at this data that we've put in. Now we can take that farther. Okay, actually, I think I'm supposed to go back to slides. Let me catch myself for a minute and make sure if I'm missing any important slides. All right, before I jump to that dashboard, because I get into this stuff, I'm just ready to go. So we've asked some questions, we've found some answers, but that's not it, right? So no one else in the world has this information. You've just collected it. So what we're going to do instead here, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Right, so no one else has this information. And what do we want to do with it? We can make sure it's valid, right? We want to look at our data. We want to analyze it. We can discuss it. We could map it. We're going to learn from it. We can maybe share it. We could do these in different ways. We can make a map, right? We could put a map out and we could share that map, see where the points fall on the map. Well, maybe we want to explore some of the connections in the data, right? Some of those things we were looking at in the survey app of seeing those charts was useful. I can share something like that through a dashboard or even through the survey app. Or maybe I even want to put a whole narrative and tell the story around it. And I'm going to go to a story map for that. But let's jump in really quickly and see some of this. So from here, we could make a dashboard that shows our data. So you can see our beverages along the bottom, the books people like, we have who it was, and this is all older data. I believe I need to refresh because I didn't set this one up to have that auto refresh set on correctly. That was my mistake. Yep, and you can see quite a number of you have filled that out. And so coffee is by far the most popular. I don't know about all you coffee drinkers out there. All right, so what else can we do with this data? Here's another dashboard. You might recognize this one from the plenary earlier today. And you can see the similar information. I'm just showing it to show that your dashboard can be pretty simple, or you can start to make it more complex. You can add bar charts. You can add all these other controls. If you want to learn more about the dashboards, we'll be going over that in the next hour. So just join us again. Now I'm going to return to the favorite color that we looked at the beginning. You may or may not have known when we looked at it before that this is a story map. And so in here, what we've done is we have our survey and we've embedded our map right with it. And this is where we stopped last time. My internet is taking quite a hit today. Sorry about that. So here's where we stopped last time, looking at the map. But there was more, right? What could we analyze? What can we look deeper into? All right, so there's more that you can keep doing. You can do different kinds of analysis of where different colors are. I'm not going to go into this too much. We'll be playing with all these things you can do after you've collected data in the next hour. But in case you can't make it, I did want to give you just a taste of the maps, the dashboards, the story maps, and all these things you can do with your data once you've collected it. Because collecting it is really just the beginning. All right, so we've looked at those. And next I wanted to talk about one other thing. We're starting to get back to more normal, right? There's a little bit less remote instruction, but some things we're learning have been good. So I did want to mention that this is a great kind of project to do when people aren't near each other, because you can use these apps from anywhere. You could be doing data collection around your house. You could be doing it in your neighborhood. You could even send links to friends and family. So it is a great project to keep in mind when you are looking for something and you are a bit dispersed. Hopefully we won't have to do too many more of those projects, but maybe it even means collecting data around different parts of your city after people have gone home for the night. All right, so we took kind of a whirlwind look. Here's a bunch of links that are going to help you learn more. So as I mentioned, you do need to have a bundle or a club kit. Both of those are for K-12 free offerings to get your accounts. There's some places you can go to get some project ideas. There's a Geo Project Hub. I also shared the link in the chat earlier to get the apps in schools and get some information there, and some information about going offline with Survey 123, finding a geomentor for the data collection. We've got another presentation, and you should join us over in that one. And I'm going to go ahead and see if there are any questions.
Kylie, we had some really interesting questions, and one of them was about whether there is a way for the users who have entered some data to be able to go in and edit that data.
Great. So that's a good question. I'm going to jump back into survey because the answer to that question is going to be right down here. So if you're using Survey 123, you can choose if people are able to add only, or add an update, or even add, update, and delete. So it is possible to go back and edit the record. You do have to set it up and help them get back to their record. And you allow them to only do these things with their own records. So it's not like they can go edit someone else's, right? But you can configure it that way.
Okay, there was another question about whether any of these tools do a sort of breadcrumb tracing. And I thought it was that a couple of them do.
Okay, so by breadcrumb tracing, you mean like tracking where the person has been as they go?
Tracking, exactly.
Okay, so there are a couple different options with that right now. Older versions of Collector have their own way of doing it built in. Workforce, because you could link that to your data collection. It's another Esri app that it didn't do the data collection, but could track the people where they were. And now the best way to do it is with Tracker, which you enable separately, and you have a special type of layer, so it's a lot more performant. And then you'll be able to track and see the tracks with that one.
Wow, that's a great list of links to the Get an ArcGIS for Schools bundle all the way down to find a GeoMentor. That's a great list.
Yeah, there's some good ones in there. And of course, you can always email us at schools@esri.com if you have other questions.
Right. Now, there is an indication that sometimes, okay, so lots of good questions coming in here. There are questions about if people have trouble submitting photos in a survey 123. Are there some tricks to a successful use of these?
Yeah, so sometimes that's going to come down to your data connection, right? Because one of the things with field data collection is you are out in the field. And while you are there, your device may or may not have a strong connection. Now, all of the apps are designed to be able to handle that in different ways. So for example, with Survey 123, if you're in the field and collecting data and you can't submit it and you're working in a browser, that's not going to work so well because that data you've collected only lives in the browser, right? If you're using the Survey 123 app, I didn't really talk about this, but I kind of mentioned it. You can download an app and use that. Now, if you've downloaded the app, it's going to be much better about storing the data you've collected in the field, and then you can send it all back in once you're at a better connection.
Cool. There was a question early on that made me think about the privileges that somebody needs to have in order to create one of these. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So first of all, a little bit for filling them out. Survey 123, anyone can do it, right? It can even be shared publicly. You don't even have to be signed in. Now, for creating it, you do need to be able to publish services because you are publishing some services behind the scenes. So that's the big one there. You do need to be a publisher.
So whoever is creating the survey controls who gets to fill it out.
Yep. So right in here, you get to pick who you want submitting it. Now, I didn't get into this, but you also will get to pick who can see the results. So those can be different groups of people. So that's something to think about.
But if you want to have somebody edit this data, how does it keep track of that the right person is editing their data?
Right. So if you're doing some of the updating, it actually what happens is behind the scenes, the feature service stores the username of the person who created that record. And so there are limitations because it's shared in special ways. ArcGIS Online is actually really smart and can set up your data to only let you, even though you're able to see the layer, you'll only see your things in that layer. So if I took the layer and added it to a map, I would see the points I'd added. Charlie, if he added it to the map, would see a different set of points because he'd only be seeing his data. So that's one thing to be aware of. And we'll talk a little bit about those different layers and what you're going to use each one for in the next session when we talk about using this data that we've just collected. All right, we are out of time. I appreciate everyone who's joined us, and hopefully we'll see some of you at top of the hour, right? Thanks, everyone.